Let's start with first news. Diego Lopes could be heading to the lightweight division, and if that happens, his first opponent is expected to be a notable name. This move up in weight is not because Lopes has been struggling or failing to perform. Instead, it appears to be the next step in his career, which means the UFC could look for a major matchup right away. One fight that has already caught the attention of fans is Diego Lopes against Charles Oliveira. A lot of people online are calling for this matchup, and when you look at the current circumstances, it actually makes plenty of sense. Oliveira recently withdrew from his scheduled fight against Arman, creating uncertainty about what comes next for the former lightweight champion. A matchup with Lopes could give Oliveira enough time to mentally and physically prepare before making his return. At the same time, there is one important obstacle that we cannot ignore. Oliveira's coach, Diego Lima, previously dismissed the idea of Oliveira fighting Lopes just a few weeks ago. However, those comments were made before the latest situation involving Alan Nascimento unfolded. At that time, Oliveira's team was already expecting him to face Arman next, so there was little reason for them to consider another opponent. Now, the circumstances have completely changed. With the Arman fight no longer happening and Lopes potentially moving up to lightweight, the matchup could suddenly become much more realistic. Lopes has already established himself as one of the most dangerous fighters in the UFC, while Oliveira remains one of the biggest names in the lightweight division. If both sides are interested, this could be a huge fight for Lopes's lightweight debut and a major return matchup for Oliveira. Move on to another news. Carlos Prates is not worried about Michael Morales waiting for a title shot. Despite the fact that both fighters are currently hoping to get the next opportunity at welterweight gold. As we know, Islam is set to face Ian Garry this weekend in a highly anticipated matchup. With the title fight approaching, the situation at the top of the division has become even more interesting. Yesterday, we reported that Michael Morales is waiting for his title opportunity, and Carlos Prates is also expecting to fight for the belt. We also covered Islam questioning why several contenders are simply sitting around and waiting instead of fighting each other. Morales has now taken an important position in the title picture by serving as the backup fighter for this weekend's main event. Because of that, some fans may believe Morales has gained an advantage over Prates when it comes to getting the next title shot. However, Prates does not appear to be concerned about the situation. During an interview with AG Fight, Prates explained that he was never offered the opportunity to serve as the backup fighter. But even if he had been offered the spot, Prates said he probably would not have accepted it. According to Prates, he does not believe it makes sense to go through an entire training camp without knowing whether he will actually compete or even who his opponent would be. More importantly, Prates believes he has already earned his opportunity to fight for the title. Instead of taking unnecessary risks, he would rather wait for the winner of the upcoming championship fight. Prates made it clear that he wants to see who comes out on top, then begin his own preparation for the title fight. His goal is simple: wait for his turn, prepare properly, and bring the UFC Welterweight Championship back to Brazil. Move on to another news. Kamaru Usman has joined the growing list of fighters taking shots at Ian Garry, and this time, the former welterweight champion appeared to mock his supposed former teammate in a hilarious moment. During a recent episode of the Pound for Pound podcast with Henry Cejudo, Usman was asked about Ian Garry and his upcoming fight against Islam. When Cejudo referred to Garry as Usman's former teammate, Usman immediately acted embarrassed by the suggestion. The moment quickly turned into a joke, with Usman making it clear that he does not consider Garry a former friend. When Cejudo brought up the fact that Garry had previously trained around Usman and questioned whether he should be considered a former teammate, Usman responded with a blunt reaction. He basically said that Garry was never his friend. Cejudo then reminded Usman that Garry had trained at the same gym, but Usman continued to explain why he does not really consider Garry to be part of any specific team or gym. According to Usman, one thing Garry has made very clear throughout his career is that he does not officially belong to one particular gym or have a permanent affiliation. Instead, Garry has described himself as someone who travels around, trains at different facilities, and learns from various coaches and fighters. Usman pointed out that Garry has essentially embraced the lifestyle of a journeyman, constantly moving around and gaining experience from different training environments. And despite all the criticism Garry has received for that approach, Usman admitted that it has worked extremely well for him so far. That is an interesting observation because Garry has built an impressive record while using a very different training strategy from many elite UFC fighters. Rather than staying permanently in one camp, he has continued to travel and seek out different training partners and coaching styles. Still, Usman's comments add another layer to the growing tension surrounding Garry ahead of his massive fight with Islam. While Usman may have been joking throughout the conversation, his comments show that he certainly does not view Garry as a former teammate or close friend. With Garry preparing for one of the biggest fights of his career, the attention and criticism surrounding him continue to grow. Move on to another news. Dana White has provided more details about the massive event the UFC has been working on, and it sounds like the promotion is getting closer to turning this ambitious idea into reality. The UFC has already been teasing what could potentially become one of the biggest events in the company's history. Now, Dana has revealed that there are active discussions taking place behind the scenes to determine whether everything can actually come together. During a new interview with TMZ Sports, Dana White was asked about the huge event and gave fans a little more information about what the UFC has planned. Dana made it clear that the promotion is aiming for something truly special. In fact, he stated that the UFC will never do anything bigger than the White House event. According to Dana, Craig's idea for the possible event is a great concept, and if everything falls into place, the UFC could potentially move forward with it. Dana explained that he has several important calls scheduled after this weekend. Those conversations could determine whether the UFC can officially get the project moving. He also revealed that someone involved with the project will be traveling to the potential location to conduct what Dana described as recon work. That means the UFC is not simply throwing around an idea anymore. There appears to be genuine work happening behind the scenes to investigate the location and figure out whether the event can realistically be staged there. Dana also sounded optimistic about the timeline. He said he is hoping to get the situation handled as soon as next week, although there are still several things that need to be completed before the UFC can make anything official. That is important because the scale of this event could require a huge amount of planning, coordination, and preparation. For now, Dana is keeping many of the major details under wraps, but his latest comments suggest that the UFC is actively working toward making the event happen. If everything goes according to plan, this could become one of the most memorable events the UFC has ever produced. Dana White has clearly set the expectations extremely high, especially by saying the UFC will never do anything bigger than the White House. Now, the next stage is getting the calls made, completing the recon work, and determining whether this ambitious idea can finally become reality. Move on to another news. We have several new UFC fight announcements to break down, with matchups being added across upcoming events. We'll start with a fight scheduled for UFC Shanghai. According to AG Fight, a replacement opponent has been found after Junior Tafa was forced to withdraw from his scheduled matchup with Su. Fortunately, the UFC has moved quickly to keep the fight together. Su will now face Levi Rodriguez Jr. in his UFC debut, giving him a new opponent on the card. Levi currently holds an 0-1 record inside the UFC. He originally earned his contract through Dana White's Contender Series after defeating Freddie Vidal. However, that victory was later overturned to a no contest. Despite that result, Levi remained with the promotion and eventually made his official UFC debut last month against Felipe Franco. Unfortunately for him, he suffered a loss by decision. Now he gets another opportunity to pick up his first UFC victory, while Su prepares to make his promotional debut. Next, MMA Junkie's Danny Segura has revealed a new matchup between Rodrigo Vera and Ramiro Jimenez. The two fighters are scheduled to meet at UFC on September 12, with the contest taking place at featherweight. Vera joined the UFC earlier this year and has already made an impressive start to his octagon career. Back in May, he secured a first-round TKO victory over Zhu Kangji, giving him a successful promotional debut. As for Jimenez, he earned his UFC contract through Dana White's Contender Series last August, after putting together an impressive performance to earn his contract. Jimenez has been waiting for his opportunity to compete. Now, after more than a year away from competition, he has finally booked his UFC debut. And we have another matchup coming to UFC Vegas 122. According to multiple sources reported by MMA Junkie's Nolan King, RJ Harris is set to face Alan Fry Jr. Harris enters the fight with an undefeated professional record of 6-0 and is already 1-0 inside the UFC. His most recent performance came in July when he defeated Alvin Hines by first-round TKO. Meanwhile, Fry joined the UFC toward the end of 2025 and made his promotional debut against GM Pat in December. He lost that fight by unanimous decision. Since then, Fry has withdrawn from 2 scheduled fights, making his upcoming matchup especially important. After nearly a year away from the octagon, Fry will be hoping everything goes smoothly this time and that he can finally return to competition. Move on to another news. Islam is back at it again, and this time Daniel Cormier was the target of some serious roasting during a hilarious interview ahead of UFC 330. DC recently sat down with Islam for an interview, but things quickly turned into a comedy session. Instead of simply answering questions, Islam spent a good portion of the conversation joking around with Cormier and taking shots at him. At one point, Islam challenged DC to say exactly what he was thinking before jokingly asking him how fat he was. Cormier tried to play along, but Islam continued to tease him about his size, creating an incredibly funny moment between the two. The conversation then moved toward podcasts. Cormier discussed his show and its success, but Islam immediately found another opportunity to mess with him. Islam joked that Cormier's podcast was basically always number 2 while another show was doing better. DC agreed that his podcast was performing well, but Islam was clearly not going to let him enjoy the compliment. Cormier then joked that Islam was trying to become that guy, which only made the situation even funnier. The two continued going back and forth, with Cormier eventually praising Islam and calling him the best fighter in the world right now. But the conversation soon shifted from Ma to wrestling and Cormier's son. DC explained that his son is now in high school and has been getting better at wrestling. He mentioned that he did not send his son to Dagestan, but believed he was developing into a very good wrestler. Islam immediately challenged that assessment. Instead of simply accepting Cormier's praise, Islam asked for the numbers. He wanted to know which major tournaments the young wrestler had competed in and what results he had achieved. Cormier admitted that his son had not competed at the biggest tournaments yet and explained that he was still improving. Islam then suggested that Cormier should eventually send his son to Dagestan to train. But Islam had another joke ready. He told Cormier that if his son comes to Dagestan next summer, it might take so long that by the time he returns, Cormier could already be ready to retire. That comment caught DC off guard, and he jokingly asked Islam if he had picked up that attitude from spending so much time around his Dagestani brothers. The entire exchange perfectly showed the playful relationship between Islam and Cormier, with Islam having absolutely no problem roasting DC from start to finish. Move on to another news. The UFC 330 main event is now official, with Islam and Ian Garry both successfully making weight ahead of their highly anticipated welterweight showdown. Both fighters stepped onto the scale and hit the required 170-pound limit, meaning there are no more weight cut concerns standing between them and tomorrow's massive main event. Islam is moving up to welterweight for this fight, and the champion has previously explained that the weight cut at this division is much easier for him. He has also talked about how training camps feel better when he does not have to drain his body as much. And judging by his appearance at the weigh-ins, Islam certainly looks like a natural welterweight. One of the commentators pointed out that Islam looked noticeably different at 170 pounds compared to his previous appearances at lightweight. Without having to cut as much weight, he appears to have added muscle and looks much bigger physically. The discussion then turned toward the potential advantage Ian Garry could have during the fight. One prediction gave Garry around a 60-40 advantage, largely because of the amount of energy Islam may have to spend if he relies heavily on his wrestling and grappling to control the fight. However, there is one major problem with that prediction. Garry simply does not seem to get tired. His cardio has become one of the biggest strengths of his game. And if he can maintain his pace for all 5 rounds, that could make things extremely difficult for Islam. Meanwhile, Michael Morales also made weight at 170 pounds and is officially serving as the backup fighter for the main event. That means Morales is prepared to step in if something unexpected happens before or during fight week. With Islam and Garry both officially making weight and Morales ready as the backup, everything is now set for UFC 330's massive main event.